Lots
I
of
mean,
noises, things that
yeah.
are going on. So it's like I'm like back here trying to do stuff in my office, and then he just loses his mind. He's like, I'm gonna go bark at this stuff. I'm all over the place, and I'm like, God dang it, dude, just hang out, just chill, just like relax on the couch for like an hour. Let me get some stuff done. He's getting acquainted. He's figuring it out.
Yeah, we've got a cat that's doing the same thing, and so it's a relatively new member of our family. And my wife's a mental health therapist, and she does everything via telehealth right now. So it's like it's if I'm in here doing this or something, and she's in there, the cat cannot figure out where she wants to go, and so it's like it's how like who gets the loudest meow, and then figure out where she stays.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I could totally appreciate that, man. So, Brian McClelland, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come on and chat with me about endurance training in particular is what we're going to be focusing on today. But before we dive into the episode, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, just so we can bring them up to speed on that if they have not heard of you or who you are and what you do?
For sure. And first off, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on. So a little bit about me. I'm currently a personal trainer and triathlon coach here in the city of Chicago. My background, I've been pretty much a, sports and fitness enthusiast and participant pretty much my entire life. I was a swimmer in high school. In college, I was a collegiate cheerleader at Texas Tech, nationally ranked. Go Raiders.
I did not know that. That is news to me. That's something I did not know about you. Do you know I'm a Longhorn fan?
Oh, no.
My mom's from Austin originally. It's been
Really?
a long year, bro. It has been a long year. We are a hot mess. Oh,
How can y'all not finish games, man? Come on.
dude, we're a great 2-quarter team. We are like, I don't know if it's I have no idea. I had this conversation with my dad the other day. Sorry for the like curveball we're in the first 5 minutes and we're off on a tangent here already. People hang with me because it's been a long season if you're a Texas Longhorn football fan, because I watch us play a great 2 quarters of football and then we go into halftime and then we just tank the second half. I'm like,
just nosedive.
Are your halftime adjustments that terrible? Are you just that poorly conditioned? Like, are you guys just running out of gas? Because it's an embarrassing thing to watch.
I got to tell you, my Red Raiders almost did the exact same thing this past week against Iowa State at home. I mean, we were, cruising and then let them come all the way back. And luckily, in the last seconds, we won with a 62-yard field goal. So, not a bad way to finish the game. But I was like, oh, we're pulling a UT.
Yeah, dude. It's funny because you look at some of the stats this year. You have Georgia, who is just on their own planet. What they've given up, I think it's 8 touchdowns all season.
All season, yeah.
We played 10 games. They've given up 8 touchdowns. Texas gives up 8 touchdowns a half. Like, we can't stop anybody.
It's Big 12 football, man.
Yeah.
Well, and then, but I mean, of course, I'm actually originally from Alabama. So Crimson Tide is, I'm sure you've seen on our text streams. Bama is my tried and true hometown, but Tech is my alma mater. So that's where I lie. And Big 12 and SEC all the way.
Okay, excellent.
Anyway.
Please continue. So Texas Tech.
So yeah, I was a cheerleader for them for 4 years. I actually ended up coaching cheerleading in early on in my career. So I would teach students how to tumble, how to stunt, and would also do choreography for anywhere from my juniors up to senior level of competition. And it was actually because of cheerleading, I ended up having a really bad neck injury to where years later, I ended up having 2 dissections and fusions in my neck. And I was probably a lot like many of the listeners that come on the podcast. And I was always in the gym, man. I mean, to be a collegiate cheerleader, I mean, you got to be able to lift. And I really do credit a lot of the Texas Tech athletic trainers for getting me to where I was. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. But when I had neck surgeries, the doctors were like, you cannot lift anything over 50 pounds overhead for quite a while. So my training in the gym went pretty far to the side. And then my question was, well, what's next? And luckily I have, my mom has some history, some some background in doing triathlon. And I also have a couple of buddies here in Chicago that told me about it. And I'll be the first to admit, man, endurance, any kind of endurance was the furthest thing from what I wanted to do. When I was in high school and even growing up, like I tried to avoid anything higher than a 400-meter run. No, bro, thank you.
400.
Anything longer than
100.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like a mile was long distance.
Yeah, for sure. Like we had to do miles when I was cheering at Tech. I was like, I'm never going to run a mile, but in a way, like when we had to cheer an entire game, stunting all the time, tumbling, all that. I mean, that kind of was its own endurance sport. But yeah, I mean, I didn't want to have anything to do with endurance. I was like, sprint, get me in and out, and I'm good. And so the thought of doing a triathlon, it was exciting, but I just wasn't sure I could do the distance. But having that swim background gave me just enough confidence to go for it. And so that was about almost 10 years ago. And I've done probably over 24 triathlons. I finished the Ironman in Madison, Wisconsin in 2015. For those that don't know the difference, I mean, Ironman isn't the only triathlon. You have anything from sprints or super sprints all the way up to full Ironman. Mm-hmm. You even have some people like the Iron Cowboy. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
Oh, yes.
But this is a gentleman that's done 50 Ironman races in 50 days subsequently, which is, to me, is
insane.
Bonkers crazy.
Insanity.
There's a great documentary on that if you haven't seen that.
I think it's amazing. On Netflix, right?
Yeah.
It has been for a while at one point. I thought it was funny in that process because I did watch it. It was really good. There was like a weather, something happened and he did it inside. I think he was indoors on an elliptical, right?
Yeah.
And people lost their mind. Oh, it doesn't count anymore.
Doesn't count.
Like,
yeah.
God, the internet is brutal.
I was even looking at it, I was like, I mean, considering what he's trying to do, cut him a little bit of slack, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it all counts.
It's still impressive.
For sure. And yeah, so anyway, so the Ironman race is probably what many people have probably seen on NBC. And that's your 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a full marathon at the end. So you have some that can take anywhere from like 30 to 45 minutes all the way up to the Ironman, which you have up to 17 hours to complete. So there's a very wide range, but yeah, so it was, going on YouTube and getting inspired by the 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds that have completed this race that got me inspired to do it. And really to continue on, it was the entire rest of the community that really kept driving me to want to continue up to the point where I wanted to do a career change. And, with the support of my wife and friends and family, 4 years ago, I became a personal trainer and then became a full-time triathlon coach as well. So I work with people independently, but I also am the head coach for the Chicago Athletic Club's Tri Club. We typically have anywhere from like 20 to 30 members each year. And again, train people that are newbies that are just starting out and hoping to finish their first sprint race, all the way to people that are training for their next Ironman. So
excellent, man. I love that. That's wonderful. So I think the best place to start this conversation, we talked a little bit off air about this. Like, we think about the people that we work with here at Rebel as people that were athletes in high school and or college, maybe professionally. The common theme, though, is that along that athletic journey, they totally fell in love with the weight room, right? Like, they got bit by the iron bug. They love to train. They want to mash weights. They want to be jacked, all this fun stuff. But our people also tend to want to be very well-rounded and robust. Like, we're not training one-trick ponies. We're not training people who just want to be able to lift a lot of weight. It's like, well, yeah, I want to go deadlift a lot of weight, but then I would also love to be able to actually have some endurance, some conditioning, some work capacity to go express that. Maybe it's rucking in the mountains, going for a long trail run, mountain biking, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so I think for a lot of our people, the trajectory is usually I play sports, fall in love with the weight room, sports are over, so now I don't have to do any conditioning, thank God. So all I'm going to do is lift all the time. And then after a few years of that, they come back around. They're like, I think I want some of this conditioning athleticism back in my life. And so when we think about this population of, we can call them, meatheads, meat monkeys, whatever it's going to be, people that just like to lift weight.
Yeah.
I use that as a term of endearment for
sure.
anyone who isn't clear on that. What are some solid strategies to get these people going again in that direction? Like, we've talked a lot on the podcast before about these low intensity conditioning methods, cardiac output, tempos, things along those lines. I can even use myself as an example. Like, I always maintain my conditioning. I haven't been doing a ton of running. We just moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've got miles of trails 2 minutes from my house. So I was like, I want to actually kind of get back into running and push this a little bit more, right? Haven't been doing it for a while though. So I think, what's a good way to get people back into this realm of, hey, let's start building your conditioning. Let's start building their endurance. And then where can we take it from there once we have a foundation in place?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think it's more about letting people, like, when they make that decision and they're focusing on the what next and how, is really sitting down and thinking about the what. And I think that's really important, because I think when people think conditioning or they think endurance, or, I've got to get, I think it immediately goes to, I got to get on the treadmill and run. And I think because the treadmill is literally we took torture chamber equipment and brought them to mainstream, that, people still feel that is what that is. I mean, it's just a torture chamber of just endless, pounding on a treadmill for endless minutes, in some cases hours. And that's not really very appealing to want to get back into conditioning. So I think, I know it was for me, and for a lot of people that I talk to, it's really find a what, and it can be any number of things, right? It could be, it could be running, it could be cycling, it could be swimming, it could be getting on the rower, doing stairs, it could be going out for a hike. I know one great thing that it was, if there are any good things that came out of the pandemic, is my wife and I started being able to go out on nice walks every day, right? And being able to enjoy our community, going to the parks. We even bought cruiser bikes and started doing rides out together. And it's being able to find something that fits within what they're already doing in terms of fitness in the gym, right? It's kind of like what I tell my triathletes or other endurance athletes who only want to focus on the discipline, right? Just going out for runs or just hitting those 3 disciplines. Is like, strength training has, it needs to fit somewhere within this. It has its place. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to take over or be the only thing, but it definitely can complement what it is that you're currently doing. So I think it's the same thing with being in the gym. Again, I'm one of those same people, man. I was always in the gym, and all I wanted to do was just to lift weights and just pardon my French, but just lift heavy shit. It's what my wife would say. A lot of people ask her, is like, do you do triathlon too? She's like, no, I just go into the gym and lift heavy shit. So, but we also know that conditioning can help complement that. And again, it doesn't have to be anything that I just mentioned. It could be even just getting in there and just doing good long reps of kettlebell swings or kettlebell complexes. That could be another form of conditioning where you're getting your heart rate up to a certain percentage. It doesn't mean that you have to redline and kill yourself doing those things. It's being able to get yourself to a certain heart rate for a certain duration of time. And that's going to be different for everybody. But if you find something and you really enjoy it, and then you're able to stick with it, then it's going to really find a good complement to your fitness training.
For sure. Let's maybe drill in and let's just use running, right? It's probably the most popular example. And I think it is something that's really gained in popularity over the last few years as this concept of a hybrid athlete continues to become more and more popular, right? You see people who are like, yeah, well, I'm going to go deadlift 500 to 600 pounds, and then I'm going to go run a 10K and actually like do it at a relatively like a pretty respectable time. So with running, when we're going to start getting people back into running longer distances, right? We're not talking about going out and running repeat sprints. We're talking about your capacity to hold a pace for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
What are some ways that we can bring people back into that world. I know, so I'll use myself as an example really quick, because when I work with athletes that want this outcome, or if I'm doing this for myself like I am right now, when I'm first getting started into what we'll call air quote longer distance running, right? Because people run 200 miles now, so I'm not really sure how to categorize this, but extended running.
Yeah.
For me on the front end, if I haven't been doing it consistently, it's like, okay, I just need to get my legs back underneath me. I just need some actual technical work here. And so like, I'll just go out and say, okay, we're going to run for 15 minutes today. There's no pacing. There's no objective. All I'm going to do, I'm just going to run casually. I'm going to breathe for 15 minutes. And then next time when I come back to do this, I'm going to go for 16 minutes. And then maybe the next time I'll do 17 minutes. And I'll probably do that for like a month. Just like really small adjustments and changes, maybe increase volume by 1 minute every week. There's no pacing concerns. There's nothing. I'm just trying to run and get a feel for this again.
Yeah.
The mistake I think people make is that they go from, I have not been running, to, okay, I'm going to go try to hold a 145, 400 pace. And it's just like, I was thinking about this on my run today, right? The human body is incredibly plastic and adaptable when given appropriate small change over time. It hates large acute changes. And I think running is like the worst culprit of this, where people go from, I've been doing very little to minimal to no running, to I'm going to go run for 30 minutes today. Right? Yeah. And that's just not a way to be successful. And so I would love to know, let's talk with our people here about how can we get you like building some miles, and we'll just use running as the example, right? But you could be bike, you could swim. There are a lot of options here. You could row. We're just going to use running as an example. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was like on one of your episodes, 88, I believe, where I think you had made the comment, your aerobic system is the most adaptable system that we have physiologically.
It is. And it's the most fun. Everybody can get good at it.
Yes, you can. But I think the number one thing is, as you just alluded to, take your time, pace yourself, right? One of the most prevalent like data that's out there, and this was probably the hardest thing for me, even as a coach with some of my long distance runners. I've got some that they love the gym and they love going in and hammering out, and they love things like HIIT sessions or going into a spin class and just like like putting the hammer down, getting that heart rate up to like 80, 90% and like almost like redlining. And sometimes that's our default position, right? And I think one thing that steers people away early on is that same sort of idea. Is like, I'm going from 0 to 100, and because I don't have an in between, right? So I think for those that are looking to get back into it, my number one recommendation is like, just start slow. And I know that's probably the hardest thing for people to do. It's the hardest thing for me to do as a coach, is to pull people back, right? And just don't even worry about cadence. Don't worry about your form necessarily. Don't worry about mileage. Just have a time in mind. Just start out 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? You're not trying to go out and win a 5K right out of the gate. Go out and just go to what feels comfortable. And, and it's comfortable and conversational. I mean, it may even help to have somebody go out there with you that might be in the same mindset, and go out there and just go for 15 minutes and still have a conversation while you're out there doing that run. And that, I think, is going to make a big difference, because once you start off slow, start off comfortable, not worrying about what your pace is, right? As you get better, as the distances, as the amount of time that you're out there doing it improves, you're really going to enjoy the process, and you're not going to feel like, it's taxing every single time, and maybe for some, it's going to be including a walk run strategy, and professionals will be out there doing that. That's part of their training regimen. Is a lot of these people that you see that are sub 3 hours, close to like 2.5 hour marathoners, all the way to your sprinters. Some of their conditioning efforts are just going out for a run walk. And, if you do have the ability to track heart rate, whether that's via watch, your Garmin there, James,
at some point in the future. my
Right,
future
sure.
Garmin.
Or heart rate monitor around the chest. Like go out there and just, the only focus you might have is just keep it at a certain heart rate and below. And it's going to be hard because you're probably right out of the gate, it's going to probably jump up to, let's say on average, we're trying to keep it under 140, right? So if your goal is to keep it under 140, that might get up there pretty quick right out of the gate. Start walking and allow that heart rate to come back down to that 120, 110, and then build it back up. And then over the course of time, the new goal becomes how long can you sustain this pace at that same heart rate level? And more often than not, that alone is going to help improve your overall cardiovascular. It's going to help in every other area and aspect of your training life. And it's going to get that run faster. So you're going to be able to go farther in shorter amount of time just by just focusing on keeping a consistent, steady state heart rate. And it sounds counterintuitive, but going slower to go faster.
Yeah, that's a strategy that I've used with a lot of clients in the past if we're doing more of this cardiac output style training where it's like, hey, we're going to cap that heart rate pretty low. And I always get a message pretty much day one when they do it. They're like, so I went to run and made it 10 yards and my heart rate was over 140. I was like, yeah, like decrease the pace. It's literally just a jog walk. You're going to jog it up. You're going to walk it down. We're going to jog it up. We're going to walk it down. Then like you mentioned, as we do this over time, we can change the game because now I can actually sustain it. And it's okay, well, how long can I sustain this pace before my heart rate starts to go up again? Right. And then, another way to think about tracking these lower intensity sessions that are so important is to say, okay, let's say I'm doing it for 30 minutes and I know my heart rate range has to stay here. Well, how much distance do I cover in those 30 minutes? Because if my heart rate is staying the same, but I'm covering more distance, we've made improvements. And so that's one thing I think that's important is when you're first getting started in this is find a way to measure it. Because otherwise it can get really boring if you don't have that what and that why. It can get really monotonous, right? But it matters. It's important. I think people would be blown away. And maybe we transition here. Let's talk about maybe some of the more advanced athletes that you work with. I think people will be blown away at the number of sessions that they're probably doing that are this low intensity, really long duration type activity, right? And I don't have as much experience in that realm, so I'll defer to you there and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, a lot of the advanced is same things as we're trying to impart, and those elite athletes that we're trying to impart on these for folks that are just coming back into it or starting for the first time. Again, you guys just came back from a workshop and training with some of the other trainers and coaches amongst this community. And a lot of it was just getting back to basics, right? A lot of time, even some of the elite athletes and some of my Ironman athletes, part of it is holding them true to doing some of the easier, less sexy workouts, right? I mean, you can see workout programs that go, really into the weeds with like the type of like hard effort cycling or swim efforts, or even like your fartleks when it comes to running. And yeah, those look cool. Those are interesting, but at the same time, those are going to be a very small percentage, like probably only at best 15% of their total output during the week, right? The vast majority of your workload should be in that zone 1, zone 2 area, right? So your heart rate at 75% or less, right? Your whatever that zone is, zone 1, zone 2 is for people. And that's obviously going to vary, but it's doing that where you're at a steady state cadence and pace. And over the course of time, obviously, as I train more people, like the more data that we have, we really can then hone into what your heart rate is, what your pace needs to be, also what your perceived rate of exertion is, because sometimes you're just not going to know the data and you really just need to find like, where is that sort of easy zone for you and stay there. We can still make it interesting and look for ways to really stay focused and not get so monotonous, but you're going to want those zone 2 runs. You're going to want those easy recovery runs. And then you also want those longer steady state runs to start building up that volume slowly but surely. And then during the week, that's, when we have a shorter duration of time, even 30 to 45 minute sessions. I mean, that's where we can kind of kick up the intensity a little bit, where we're either doing hill repeats, sprints, things like that. But even those rest intervals in between those hard efforts still count for that 15% of your harder efforts, because the goal is that heart rate's going to stay up the entire time, or the vast majority of time during those sessions. But in order for everybody to improve and also have enough time to recover, then we really need to make sure that the vast majority of the workload is being done in that low energy efforts.
I'm curious, what does an actual training week from an organization standpoint look like for the higher level endurance athletes? Because I've never done a program like that. I've never coached people like that. So I'm just curious, like if we take ourselves to the far of that extreme with these high level advanced endurance athletes, we can probably pull and learn some things that we can then, the listeners can, take and utilize in their own training, hopefully. What does like a training week look like? How is it laid out? How is it organized when we're thinking about balancing this balancing act that we always talk about in the podcast of these high sessions and these low sessions?
Right.
Maybe if you just have an idea or could walk us through what a week would look like for an athlete like that in the off season.
Sure. In off season, and actually this is great because this is going to be more apropos to some of our folks listening in that are still wanting to incorporate good, hard strength training efforts. I would say, let's say it's 3 days a week that we're lifting. That's part of the program that I'm on. And then I'll give you one example right now. I've got an athlete that is looking to train for another 70.3. So that's a half Ironman. So that's half of all the other distances I just mentioned earlier, and looking to compete, right? With his effort this past year, he was top 20 in his age group. So, and his age group is one of the most competitive. He was in the 25 to 29-year-old age group. He'll be actually graduating. He'll be getting like the next year up. He'll actually be in the 30 to 34, which is a even more competitive group. So times have got to be able to improve. So the one area of his training that he wants to improve the most on is run. So we have brought him back into 3 days a week of full body strength training. Primary focuses in our big three. So it's still good compound moves and good accessory work each cycle. But when it comes to his endurance training, we do still have a way to improve a little bit even more on his bike. So that's still going to be a part of it, but still fitting in some of those runs. So what we'll do is on his easy efforts is we'll have him do some and this is something I did with Toby early on, another one of my clients that you're familiar with, is we allowed him to do an easy, very simple warm-up run before his workout, and then do a little easy cool down run at the back end of his workout.
Got it. Like 10 to 20 minutes, something like that.
Something like that. Just make sure that it's like, this should feel like the easiest thing in the world. You may feel like you're just jogging. You could even walk, do the same sort of like run walk, but then that way it's already anywhere from like 30 to 40 minutes per day already built in over the course of the week. And then we can also add some other segments of some of his other disciplines, swims and bikes, the other 2 days where it's also like kind of zone work, where it's just easy to moderate efforts, just going for endurance, right? Just going for distance and not worrying about output, not trying to get strong, not to get hard. We're just working on form and consistency and good cadence and pace, right? So we're just focusing on those little things. And then toward the end of the week is where we can actually add in some higher intensity stuff. Like on that Saturday, we will then have that Saturday be where it's like his hardest efforts on the run, going into and it could be any combination of like mile repeats, half mile repeats, quarter mile repeats, hill work on the treadmill. Cause unfortunately here in Chicago, A, we don't have any hills, and B, it's about to be the dead of winter for the next 5 months. So we got to get them on a treadmill and try to get some good elevation, get some good hard efforts going up, and then ease off for maybe do a minute on a 3 or 4% grade, and then a minute or two rest, and then just keep those things going. And then over the course of time, we'll continue to increase that elevation and that grade, but make sure that those Saturdays are those hard efforts. But when we come back into those easier efforts, it's just, again, back to easy pace, back to good easy conditioning. But there's that way it mixes it up. It's not just solely focused on run. There's a lot of other good cross training in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something else that people should be able to think through is that, if you're wanting to get improvement in one specific area, and I know we've been talking specifically about running right now, allow yourself to do additional cross training because it all accumulates, right? So get on the spin bike for a minute, get on a rower for a few minutes and just kind of mix it up a little bit. And then it's going to just help your overall cardiovascular system improve. And then it's also going to translate to that run as well. And that way you're also minimizing a lot of the impact that you're getting that is, most indicative to running.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. So I'm just going to say it back to you to make sure that I followed you. Okay. So off season for an endurance athlete. And again, people listening, right? Like make sure you qualify yourself correctly within this schema. Lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Right? Lift routine centered around big compound movements. Let's get strong. Let's get powerful. Let's use accessories to put on some muscle if we need to, or just more to keep the gears greased.
Yep.
On those lift days, we're going to have probably like 10, maybe 20 minutes on the bookends where we're going to do just really low intensity, easy aerobic activity. It can be on a treadmill. It could be on a bike. It could be on a rower. It could really kind of like choose your weapon of choice there.
Yeah.
Saturday is where we're putting our absolute hardest, most miserable conditioning session. This is where we're going true gas pedal down, intervals, etc. What do the Tuesdays and Thursdays look like that are sandwiched in between?
So if we're working specifically on that run, so that's like that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then in between is thinking of it as another low intensity cross training day, right? And then you might be able to fit in a few small intervals and where on say like a Thursday, on a Tuesday, we can do a little bit of hard effort, but we're still getting that heart rate up, but the still vast majority of it is like an easy warm up, cool down, maybe 10 to 15 minutes warm up, 10 to 15 minutes cool down. And right in the middle there is just going to be a little bit of like, say we're just doing like 30-second sprints, 30-second sprints with like a 2-minute recovery. And so that way we're building on, in this case, like good cadence and then just good total output. But the vast majority of that, you still get a little bit of that intensity, but the still majority of that is a good conditioning and lower conditioning effort. And then on a Thursday would just be a zone 2, right? So it's not just recovery. It's maybe just a little bit of above, but we're still below sort of that sort of mid-range, right? I still want to work the bookends, right? I want to stay down here on the low end, and I want to help increase capacity and output on the bookends. It's like that area in the middle where it's like, it's not enough to really get gains, and it's also not easy enough to recover. So I want to stay out of the gray zone, right? That's sort of like that mid level. So I want to stay here. So on that zone 2, I'm going to still be below my 75% effort, but it could be something that I can sustain. So this could be where I'm just doing steady state efforts, whether that's on a bike, on the treadmill, out on the road, on a rower. If I find a good pace where I can maintain a good steady heart rate, I want to just be able to sustain that for as long as I can for about 20 to 30 minutes. For some, we may start gradually increasing that right before we get into our main season. I may slowly start adding 5-10 minutes here to start building up their volume a little bit more during the week so that they're prepared for it once we get into their primary season of training.
How does the total amount of mileage work or volume look if we're thinking difference between what we're talking about right now, which is off season, which probably falls, I think, pretty tightly with a lot of people listening? Like that schema and plan is something I think a lot of our athletes would probably run and be successful with.
Sure.
Like how high would you actually push that time domain on that Tuesday or Thursday? We're talking 30 minutes, 45, an hour, 90 minutes. Like, do you kind of have a cutoff in there? It just depends how the athlete's feeling.
It really does depend on how the athlete's feeling. I think it also just depends on the athlete that you have in front of you, right? For this particular athlete that's looking for a 70.3, I probably want to keep them like somewhere around the 45-minute to an hour range. But I think for a lot of people, that are just starting out, kind of coming back to that initial focus, is 20 or 30 minutes is just fine, right? And then over the course of time, as 20 to 30 minutes just becomes a little bit easier, then just slowly add about 5 to 10%, every week. And then I would probably cap it for most. I mean, there's really no need to necessarily have to go anything more than 45 minutes to an hour. I think it's only when I really get into into season where, during the week program should ever go above probably an hour and 15, hour and a half, just because we need to get some specific efforts in on some of those days. But considering people's livelihoods and time commitments, I think that's going to be the top thing that we want to be able to work around, and just being able to get a good 20 to 40 minutes in range is more than enough. Excellent.
Okay, beautiful. Brian, this has been fantastic. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, really any other big rocks that we should hit on. But I'm thinking we've done a pretty good job here of helping the people listening have a good idea of both the structure and how to think about, building this endurance, whether or not you're, more in that beginner side, you're getting back into it, or even for the people that are a little bit more advanced in the crowd. Because there is a lot of crossover within that schema, it seems.
For sure. And I think it's just to kind of summarize, it's just to make sure that, especially for those that are just starting out and trying to find how this fits for what they're currently doing, decide on the what first, and maybe that will take a little bit of time of just discovery. And try different things. And who knows, maybe it's something that you haven't tried in a while, or something you've never done, and that you're, part of the pun, but like a fish to water, that you're going to just really enjoy it. I mean, I know for a lot of people that get back into swimming, I mean, sometimes it's less about the conditioning as about just their mental health, right? And just being able to zone out and just not worry about metrics and how much and the time and the intensity. It's just going in and just getting a good, relaxed effort. And sometimes that is as important, if not more, in some cases. So find the thing that's you're going to enjoy. And maybe it is a combination of mixture and things. And if it's a mixture of things, who knows? Maybe you're a triathlete, and maybe we work together in the future. But
a triathlete in hiding.
That's right. And then start small and start slow, right? Don't try to think you got to jump into the deep end right out of the gates, or match the intensity of how hard you're going and how high that heart rate goes up when you're max lifting on deadlift or on squats or doing bench. Pull back a little bit, take the ego out of it, and don't worry about what other people are doing around you or in the gym. Never worry about what the person next to you is doing. Do your own race or do your own event, and just go out there and ease into it. Enjoy the process. And then that way, if you're enjoying it and you're noticing that, your overall cardiovascular improves and it's translating to your output in the gym, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to sustain than being able to get burned out, real quick.
Yeah, I love that. I think two really big takeaways in this realm, which is, run your own race, start slow, and play the long game. There are so many gains to be had in that low intensity realm. I think people would be blown away by how much progress they can make there if they just stayed patient and gave themselves time, as opposed to trying to rush it and jump the gun. But Brian, this has been fantastic. For people that want to find you, where can they go to find you if you would like to be found?
Sure. Yeah. So my business is BMC Performance Coaching. I am on Instagram at that same handle, and also online at bmcperformancecoaching.com. And so if there's anybody out there, some of those untapped triathletes that are out there that are interested in giving this the sport of shots. I obviously work with a lot of people here in Chicago locally, but also work with a lot of people remotely. And just also know that if you want to get into that sport, Ironman doesn't have to be the first thing. There was a lot of other distances before that, again, to kind of get you into the community. And if you're out there and you're interested, I'd love to talk to you and see if we can work together.
Awesome. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing rest of your week, and we'll be back next Monday.
James, thanks for the time, man.
Absolutely.